Well, thank you so much, Ron. That was amazing. Next up, we have Rashod Taylor. Rashod is a contemporary photographer whose work is in a window into the Black American experience. Taylor attended Murray State University and earned a bachelor's degree in art with a specialization in fine art photography. Most recently, his work was acquired by the Museum of Fine Arts Houston for his series Little Black Boy. He is also the 2021 recipient of the Arnold Newman Prize for New Directions in Photographic Portraiture. Taylor is working on a series, Little Black Boy. He documents his son's life and his own anxieties of fatherhood in the face of a society confronting enduring prejudice, injustice, and racism. In this ongoing long-form project, Taylor addresses themes of family, race, culture, and legacy through portraiture. Large and medium format process favored by the artist is a contentious nod to the gravity of content and intention of frame. This format also disarms subjects by slowing time and heightens tension by raising intimacy. Taylor's editorial clients include National Geographic, Essence Magazine, ProPublica, among others. His work has also been featured in CNN, The New Yorker, The Atlantic, BuzzFeed News, Feature Shoot, and Lens Scratch. Rashod Taylor lives in Springfield, Missouri with his wife and son. Please welcome Rashod.
Oh, this thing is shaky. How's everybody doing tonight? Okay. I'm going to take a quick selfie if you don't mind. So I got to get my IG followers up here. So everybody, can you, wait, oh, there we go. So everybody, I could get, hold on. There we go. So everybody smile. Oh, wait, let's do this. There we go. All right, 1, 2, 3, yeah. Wait, let's turn it this way. Oh, there we go. All right, perfect. All right. Had to get that out of the way. Get my timer set up here. Thank you for the introduction. And I am honored and privileged to be here. So a big shout out to Andrea Wallace. I don't know if she's even here. Oh, hey! And Esther Nooner. So I really appreciate them inviting me to the ranch last year. So this is my second year here. And I'm teaching a wet plate class, Introduction to Wet Plate, which has been amazing. And today I'm going to have an artist talk, obviously, here. So wanted to kind of dive into two of the ongoing projects that I'm working on and just kind of tell you a little bit more about them, how I started. Little background about me. I'm originally from Bloomington, Illinois, and I currently live in Missouri. And I'm trying to think of something fun. I like Bublo ice cream. That's the best ice cream ever. So if you're from the South, you'll understand. So wanted to start off with this. I'm here teaching a wet plate class. I'll tell you a little bit about wet plate journey. So wet plate collodion is basically the second photographic process. So it's after daguerreotypes. And essentially it's about, it's a process that you take some kind of substrate, tin, glass, aluminum, kind of whatever you want, and you coat it, synthesize it, and expose it and develop it, all within about 15 minutes. So it is an amazing process, very cumbersome and tedious, and you can ask any of my students how much they love it right now. So I really fell in love with it back in 2012. I saw the work of a wonderful artist. Her name is Joni Sternbach. She shoots portraits of surfers. So I saw this book, and I'm like, wow, these surfers are amazing. Like, I want to do that. So I was in Illinois at the time. I found this gentleman right here who's pictured. This is probably one of my first actually, this is an ambrotype. His name is Dale Bernstein. So Dale is out of Indianapolis. And I found his workshop. It was a weekend workshop. The cool thing about Dale was that he assisted Richard Avedon, and I think he printed for Irving Penn. So that was kind of cool. So had a lot to talk about when you talk about the photography masters. So just really love this process just because it kind of got me back into making things with my hands. I shoot obviously I shoot mostly all analog, but at the time I shot some digital, and just like any average person, you probably have thousands and thousands of photos on your hard drive, right? Or on your phone. I know I have about 30,000 pictures on my phone right now. So I wanted to get back to art making and making these one-of-a-kind pieces. So I, do portraits, and that's kind of how I started. Found my rhythm in just portraiture and exploring that, really trying to get the process down, just because it's pretty challenging to do so. So portraits, friends, family, this is my father-in-law. I call this a Dominican cowboy because he's Dominican and he has a cowboy hat, so. And you'll notice my titles are pretty amazing, by the way. It's okay, I can make fun of myself. But, yeah, this is a start. Let me talk about this transition here. So, been making photographs, and I kind of, and with wet plate, I wanted to do more, right? I wanted to make portraits that meant something, portraits that kind of were a representation of what I was feeling as a black man in America. And I'm into history, and I did some research, and on the left is Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass obviously is an abolitionist and in the 1800s. And I think the thing that I was really interested in was the fact that he was the most photographed person in the 19th century. So there's over 160 portraits of him. Or he sat for more than 160 portraits, right? And the interesting thing about it was this was for him, the reason he sat for those portraits was really, he looked at photography, and I do the same thing, as a tool. Photography is a tool to communicate, to educate, to really shed light on areas that people may not have a viewpoint on, and to challenge others' viewpoints. So I felt like for him, he wanted to portray a distinguished, he wanted to show dignity, he wanted to show an accomplished black man. He wanted to show that black people can be powerful. He wanted to show all of these things because you have to remember that this is back in, the 1860s, 1870s. He was born in 1818 or 1817. They don't know exactly which date, but it was powerful because up until that day, no one saw a black person other than a slave, right? So if that's all you see black people as slaves, then this is contradictory to what that narrative is. And that was a reason why he wanted to be photographed. And I just really understood photography is power. The next image to the right here, it's been called a couple different things, either whip Peter, scorched back, but I'll summarize the story due to time. Essentially, he was a slave, and he was beaten so bad that, obviously his scorched back, hence the title. But the real interesting part about it is that when he was photographed by medical, because obviously he ran away and they photographed him in the hospital, and these photographs were spread out everywhere because this is in 1863. Right around the Civil War. So what these pictures did of the scorched back gave people in the North even a better idea of, well, what's slavery really like? They didn't know. There was nothing to inform them. There was no, because their narrative was skewed by whatever people in the South wanted them to know or look at, right? Not saying poking fun of today, but there's a lot of narratives out there. But this was the truth. And going back to my original point, photography brings truth. Photography brings power. So with this series that I've been working on, also a big influence, Gordon Parks, and I'm really into America and flags and what that means. So with that same thread, Gordon Parks obviously is an amazing hero of photography. And just the juxtaposition in this image called American Gothic. Oops, let's go back. Called American Gothic. It's contradictory. You have American flag, and you have this woman who is, the lowly of lows, right? And I think for me, I wanted to incorporate all of those items within photography as power. Photography is there to get a point across, is to illuminate a thought, right? So I started to make these portraits of the series called My America, which is really more of investigation of, my experiences, but then even bigger than that, just what's it like to be Black in America, and what's it like that other people may not understand totally or not have the opportunity to have that understanding, if that makes sense. So this piece is called The Past. So just kind of obviously when you go back to what Peter, I looked at that image and made this one, and I wanted to kind of just show, what that past, that dark past looks like. And this is this is the 8x10 tintype. So let me back up real quick. So I shoot mostly tintypes. I shoot my tintypes on black and aluminum, typically an 8x10 size. I also photograph a little bit with ambrotypes, which are glass with the collodion on top of it. So same process, but just different substrate. This is titled The Present. This was made in 2018, so right around the time of, it wasn't the exact same year, but beforehand when I think about Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray. I mean, there's so many names that, the list can go on, that impacted me, right? Because these people look like me and you're getting shot down. So this is kind of in a response to that. And again, juxtapose on the American flag. Now, the thing about America, it's interesting because I think that these images kind of challenge your view of America a little bit. I mean, that's the goal because, I do like America. Don't get it wrong now. So I'm a proud American, but it's just this contradiction and this really interesting dynamic when you are Black in America. And these images explore that. Let me go back real quick. So this is one of my favorite ones, The Future. So this is my son, LJ. But I feel like there is a future. I feel like I am an optimistic person. I'm not, doom and gloom or whatnot, but I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel, I sometimes incorporate, like African, like this necklace is African inspired, going kind of back to the roots of, where we come from. So a lot of this work has just a lot of different commentary. Some commentary I talk about, and some I kind of just want the reader to think about. Like, I don't want to give them, the reader too much information. It's kind of like, hey, just absorb it. What does it mean to you? Still life. Gotta love the guns. I live in Missouri now, too, so there's a lot of guns in Missouri. And then this one, this is kind of the ending piece not the ending piece, it's kind of a transition. So this is just called, it's just an American flag, but I purposely, scratched and, redeveloped the tint type and just worn it down and just to want to show like the tattered nature of the flag. And then I kind of went through a little bit of I kind of got tired of shooting in the studio a little bit, and I had the opportunity to shoot an assignment for National Geographic. It was based off of the series, so I kind of took two lenses I shot for the story, but then I shot for my own work, right? So you always want to shoot for yourself sometimes too. So this is at Marietta National Cemetery in Marietta, Georgia. So the whole theme here is Black military service. So my family, my great uncle Lucky Taylor served in the military as a medic in World War II, and this is where he's buried. So wanted to just show the expansiveness of all of these fallen soldiers. It's just, I just love the landscape here. But moving forward, like with when you think about Black military experience, it's very interesting. Just because you have a group of people who are giving up their lives for a nation that in most of history has not cared about them. So when you think about the sacrifices that people of color had made for the United States, it's kind of sobering. I take a step back and like, so this is actually my cousin, who's a sergeant in the Army. She did 2 tours, I think Iraq, Afghanistan, and she's a medic. She's a medic also, like my great uncle. And I just love this image. I don't think she was crying, but just like the water in her eyes, it's just really surreal and just sobering, right? Because that's what they're doing. My uncle, he would serve in the military, but then come back to Jim Crow, right? He would come back to segregated South. He would come back to maybe being a second-class citizen. So these are the things that are kind of intriguing that added to my to this project, because that's just another thread that I wanted to attach. And these are my little cousins. It's very intense. They did a great job on that one. So they're my cousins, but then their father served in the Air Force, and his father served in the Army. So it's just a lot of family ties, and so it does get real personal for me with this, this section. But I think this might be the final one, and that's my cousin this is in Georgia still this is the Army National Guard. So this cousin is in the Army National Guard. The other one was in active duty. All right. How am I doing on time? Let's see here. All right. Got 7 minutes. All right. So that was my one series I've been working on for a while. So that's ongoing. The next series, which some of you may be familiar with, is the Little Black Boy series. So this series started at the birth of my son, really. So about 7 years ago. So this is the image that kind of started it. And I'll kind of go from the beginning. So going through, being a first-time father, and a photographer, you always take pictures of your family, obviously, right? Your sons, your kids. And that's kind of how it started. I started to notice as I went through and made more pictures that there were different threads that I wanted to look at. Because I kind of thought, going back to the thread of like a narrative, is the fact that, we don't see a lot of positive images of black families, especially fathers and sons, or sons too. This image was really, it tickled me just because if you look real here at his hand, so he had to be about 6 months, maybe 8 months, and he's holding my wife's, nightgown like, hey, dude, this is my woman now. You're on the couch, buddy. So yeah. And it pretty much is, though. He's definitely a mama's boy. So as you can see in the next photo. So a lot of these photos are just more documentarian. I shot with the Leica. I brought it to family functions and pretty much just documenting his life. But then I started to notice these different threads and that I wanted to explore. Like he has a shirt, Dream Big, and here's a police shield and this little girl in the background. So I just thought some of these things were interesting to kind of explore more. And then it kind of morphed to portraiture. And then as it morphed, I just took it more seriously, right? So I moved to medium format. Some of the images, so this is a medium format shot. He was 4 years old and, just laying in my bed. Isolation, I think about. And then it kind of hit me a little harder, and I said, okay, I think I might have something here. I want to explore this a little bit more. I want to show what this, black life is as a little black boy, because you just don't see that. So in the images, I'm documenting just kind of everyday life. Everybody dresses up as Superman. Everybody hides, and we're playing hide and go seek. Yeah, well, we're going to capture that because we want to capture that joy, that black joy, that those moments, those tender, loving, caring moments that you just don't see. That's important to me, and to document him in this light, I felt that it can have a lot of meaning, and it could go somewhere. And then at the same time, with the images, I really wanted to layer them. I wanted to layer them, the meaning of them, where you kind of have to look at it for a little bit. You need to sit with it. Like when you're in a museum, you need to kind of sit with the art. You need to, explore it. And some pictures do that, some pictures don't, but that's really my goal. So for instance, this image called Deep Sleep, on the surface, he's, napping, sleeping, peacefully. But for me, it's more of it was just more of a thought of, hey, this might be a post-mortem look at my son. Like, in the world we live in, he might not outlive me. And it was me really coming to grips as a father about that and that reality and thinking through, like, well, crap, like, that's real. Tamir Rice was 12 years old when he got shot down by the police with a toy gun. Like, that's not that far-fetched for my son. And I think for me with the work, I'm kind of on the stand too, right? I mean, there's images of me and him, and I feel that it's really, helping me work through just being a father and how to raise a black boy into a man in this country, right? So, a lot of the images are me and him, and then my wife and him. I like this diptych of us. I like to use light a lot too, just to kind of I like how the light here on the left picture sculpts my eye there. That's nice. And I don't know, I just try to find light and use that in normal settings, because obviously most of these images are, in and around our house, at friends' homes, different locations. This was just another self-portrait of him sleeping. Shout out to the New Yorker, they like this one. Yeah. This is best, I call this best bud. So this is funny. So this is an interesting relationship between grandkids and their grandparents, right? So I'm in this life now that I have a 7-year-old, and then my dad's in his 60s, and it's so interesting how their relationship is. And I feel like parents, and I know there might be some grandparents here, like, I really feel that they're trying to get back at the kids, because, like, I would go to their house and he'd be like, Daddy, Papa gave me ice cream for breakfast. And I'm like, ice cream for breakfast? What is this? Like, I never got ice cream for breakfast. We get scolded. You get hit upside the head. Like, what? But it's just interesting. But their relationship is so beautiful and so pure. Like, they're just, like, inseparable. And I love that. And that's what people need to see, because for me, that's just normal life. But I have friends, families, and other people I know that it's just not like that. They don't have the privilege to have their have their grandparents, or even their parents, or even their father there, right? So it's this conversation that these pictures show without saying it, in a way, because I'm there. I'm there making the photos with him. His mother's there making the photos with him. And that's what I want to come out, because it's what is in the pictures, but it's also what's not in the pictures too, that really makes the difference. And I think that's just so powerful. And, I hope he, looks back at these images and the time we spent together, positively, because so far so good. He's pretty open and really honestly a collaborator with the work. He's always like, oh, Daddy, can you get your camera? Let's make a picture. I'm like, yes. And then some days it's like, hey, you need to sit for this picture, or if you do, I'll give you McDonald's, or ice cream. So it has gone to that. I'm not above bribing a child to get what I need. And I sometimes tell him too, like, hey man, let's keep this photography thing going, because this is going to pay your college tuition. So he's slowly learning. But importantly though too, and we're starting to have conversations of like, well, what do these pictures really mean? Because he's at a point where he's still trying to understand that. Like, he's saying, oh, Daddy, she's brown, or she's like caramel. I'm like, hey, that's good. You know the difference, right? So it's really teaching him different cultures and things, and how he learns. I love this piece. So this piece is called Reflection of Me. And I feel like as a parent, obviously your kid's a reflection of who you are. And for me, it's my goal to try to leave something behind for him, right? Not just like land or money, but just, how to live a upright life, how to be respectful, how to treat women, how to, be an upstanding citizen. Like, those are important to me. And those are, partly what I want to leave. Faith, things like that. Going back to, there's American flag again. So going back to my flag obsession, this is called It's Complicated. So again, even going back to the other series with military service, again, it's just the whole idea of being black in America is just a complicated conversation, right? And it's just something that is challenging, regardless of where you stand or not, but it's just a challenging conversation. And I want people to think about those things and, be willing to have these challenging conversations, because a lot of it comes down to just talking. I feel like today's day and age, like, people just don't talk anymore. People can't have a cordial conversation. And I want, through conversation, through the impact of some of these pictures of just a little black boy living his life, but it's impactful because you just don't see it. Those are the things that, I want to get out of this work and people to get out of the work. Yeah, we're teaching them how to swim. My wife is doing that more than me. And I love this picture too. This was actually down in Texas. So this is my brother-in-law and LJ. And I just love it. Him and his uncle. But again, there's images that say a lot more than what I even have to say. And obviously this is the ending image here. I'm a little over, but this is Easter Sunday. So I don't know. Being a black child growing up, Easter Sunday, that's the Sunday that whether you go to church or not, you're getting up and you're going to wear the suit. And we had that day, and he wasn't having it. So I don't know. It just encapsulates like just my experience, right? I did that when I was a kid, My friends did that. People can relate. I think overall with the series, whether you're black or white or whatever, everyone has a brother or a sister or a little niece or nephew or whoever, and they grew up with. So I think that's what really helps connect people, is that there's still common ground. It just happens that this is a story about a little black boy. So that is all.
Am I good? Rashod? Thank you so much. And we're going to take 10 minutes for questions and answers. So if you guys have a question, just raise your hand, and I'll run the mic to you. And we just ask that you use the mic to ask your question so the live streamers at home can hear questions and answers. Got one in the back.
What's the first name of the first speaker? Ron? Hi, thank you for the great talk. This is a question focused to Ron. I really appreciate that you tried to unpack what is good art and what makes art good. Some of the things I agreed with, some of the things I didn't. But what about the artist who is ahead of their time? What about artists that, well, Van Gogh is a perfect example. They're clearly of a different age or a different perspective. I don't think that any of your 26 categories capture the dynamism of someone who's just following their course because they have to.
So your question is, what's your question?
What about the artists that are not of their time or they're ahead of their time?
Well, I think those 26 points come off a little bit like a manifesto. And I think what's important to recognize about a manifesto is that it's necessary that you disagree and agree with certain parts of it. That's what a manifesto is about. It puts something out there. But I'm not an art historian. I'm not a theoretician. I'm not even an artist, I don't think. I'm just lucky to be here. But I think your question about, well, what about those who are ahead of their time? I think in the case of Van Gogh, who maybe wasn't appreciated in his lifetime, for me might fit in the category of, like, he's now in the zeitgeist of his time, There's a moment that recognizes him, and it's that moment when his work becomes good. And so certainly they're not. It's not a complete list. It's not even a good list. It's a list to ponder and think about. But I'm definitely going to think about your suggestion a little more deeply and think about if that's how that factors in or makes its way into this incomplete list of thoughts. Thanks.
Hi. For both of you, I just wanted to kind of commend your talks, because today at lunch we were talking about this whole idea of people have theses, they have the reason why they do their work, but the whole point is to be able to translate it and communicate it, and I feel like both of you guys touch on something that's really important, which are things that we know, that we experience: empathy, children, imagination, play, and I think that all of the reasons behind those choices are really beautiful, but they're accessible because of the way that you frame them. And that image of your son, specifically with the flag, is just really striking, because at the end of the day, we were all children, and I feel like that always touches a chord for people when trying to understand and digest the complexities of race and class and all of these things in the US, and just the seesaw too, like all of it. I think it's really beautiful what you guys are able to do with your complex ideas and how you synthesize and communicate them, and make it so that we can also understand them if we're not familiar with the concepts.
I just said something.
Let's think here. So, I mean, I appreciate the comment. And the question part was more like, no, just, okay. I appreciate, that was beautiful. Thank you. I guess I can just add on. I mean, that you hit it right in the head. I mean, that's my plight, is just to make art accessible and for people to understand it. Because I really hated like going to the art museums and seeing like a blob and like people say, oh, this is this and this. I'm like, wow, like where'd you get that from? Like, I don't get it. And granted, some art obviously is not supposed to, you're supposed to, gain your own insight. But I for me personally, wanted to make something that people can connect to, right? Because I'm a connector. I love people and connecting. And I think that it's important that we all try to reach out, communicate these complex, they're hard issues that will never, honestly, they'll probably never go away, but I think it makes life a lot more easier when we can have a conversation and just deal with the truth that, like I said, I like to say, like, you call a spade, right? And it's things in life that we just have to deal with, and we can't kind of all hide under a rock and not talk about it, because it's going to affect us some way or another. And I just feel like making work like this will at least maybe nudge a little bit, right? Not gonna solve anything really, but just maybe nudge people to maybe have a conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Nafemi. I sometimes I'm better with questions because I just don't talk too much, but I was just thinking about Rashad's work, because when I was done, Rashad was like, oh, where do I fit in there?
Yeah.
And I think about that. I mean, this list is really maybe for me, but I want to share it as a tool. But I think about, Rashad, how your work is so beautifully crafted, if it's in that category. I think it does represent the zeitgeist of the time. I think it teaches us something. I think it knows its audience too, and I think it's really, really beautiful the way you're layering all those kind of attributes that make your art so meaningful.
Hey man, you're gonna get me all like emotional up here.
Hi, I have a question for Ron. I'm over here. In your list, you said well crafted or crafted well and well crafted and designed well. I would love for you to unpack the difference between those two things.
Mm-hmm. There's always a lot of conversation about the difference between art and craft, and I think design is another silo that maybe is a third silo that people talk about. For me, the difference is that design solves problems. And so what are the problems that design solves when it relates to art? And I suggested that piece, what is it called again? I'm a little nervous. Levitating rock, that big rock at Lackawanna. Like how do you design the problem, or how do you solve the problem of bringing that rock to Lackawanna? How do you, even in the work that the workshop participants are doing, they're trying to figure out how to do something. For me, that's the design. You have to design the art, even though the art itself isn't design, right? Design of a building, for example, is how do you accommodate 100 people in a room and they can exit if there's a fire, and there's all these questions about what design is, but sometimes you have to design the thing. And for me, that's different than the making of the thing, the crafting of the thing, how well you put it together, how you're able to manipulate the materials that make that solution or make that thing that may not even have a function necessarily. And so those, to me, are maybe the distinctions between craft and design.
Hi, my name is Cassidy. I'm actually in Rashod's class, so this is super awesome. We're all here geeking. But my question is for both of you, actually. I was curious as to how you both think about the role of materiality in the materiality of your medium, and how that interacts with and defines the character and impact of your work.
Question. Oh, we good? Let me go first. So I would say that's a great question. I haven't really thought about that a lot. I think I'll just answer it from like my wet plate work experience, because for me it's really important. I use that medium. Oh, can you hear me? I use that medium just because of the archivability of it, right? So a tint type, ambrotype, made properly, will last hundreds of years, like at least 100 years, right? Because we're still looking at the ones from the 1800s. So for me, I wanted that series to be in wet plate because of that, and then also just because of the threads that were prevalent in those times up until today. They're still there. So like an example, you think of, oh, well, where did the police come from? Well, they were called the Slave Patrol in the South. That's where the police came from, right? So there's a lot of different threads, and obviously police are still here, but when you look at the threads of where things come from, it informs you to why they are the way they are today, and how you have to interact and try to have change. But in some cases, obviously, some things don't need to be changed; they need to just be abolished, right? But going back to materiality, like you asked me, yeah, that's totally it. It's just more about, I wanted to get back to I think for me, the seriousness of the topic, I want it to last as long as possible. I want people to look at this while I'm long and gone, right? I want my son's kids to look at it, right? So.
Yeah, good question. I think a lot about material. It might be central to the work that I do. And I think a lot about there's different ways I describe it. Sometimes I describe it as material culture and what a material means in a culture. I just thinking about Rashod's work, like using the materials of a particular time period, and using them today allows us to span the centuries and understand what's happening today and connect them to what happened in the past. I think that's part of material culture. And another is to think about material ecology, like where materials come from, and what that means. Like, are they transported long distances? Do they come from certain places that are accessible or inaccessible to some? And in the case of the projects I showed, like the pink teeter-totter is made of the same material that the wall is made out of. It's positioned in a different orientation and it's colored a different color. One orientation makes a barrier to prevent people from coming together. Another orientation makes people engage together, being very intimate. And so that's how I think about material in that project. And I have a very like a decades-long practice of reintroducing earth as a building material, and so it's something that I've been working on for a very long time. But it's really about making things with earth as a form of preservation and activism, so that the tradition of building with earth, that is a human tradition across the planet, does not die. And so I try to make things with earth to perpetuate those traditions. And those are traditions that are very intimate to my own family history. My family's probably lived in earthen buildings for thousands of years. And so I like to think about earth as the most advanced building technology on the planet. And I like to think of robots as like the most primitive, because we've just been using them for a short time, and I've been using robots and they break all the time, and they're just really primitive things. But the earth, it sticks, it works, it dries. So, yeah, thanks.
Got time for one more question? Anybody? All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.